Look at this graph.
Yes, look at this graph. What do you see? An outdated meme? I see the man behind the graph. His name is Chad Kroeger, the lead singer of Nickelback, also known as the most hated band of all time. Now, if you're a quirky millennial like me,
No, God, please, no.
you've likely heard of this band and the absolute devastation involved with supporting them. I think we can all think back to someone we've known at some point fighting for their life because they supported this band. Now, personally, I don't really like Nickelback. Do they make the best songs? No. Do they make formulaic radio tracks that kind of sound like a lawnmower? Yeah, but whether you like these guys or not, your own perspective completely removed, we can all observe that the amount of hate these guys got was absolutely insane. It really became somewhat of a cultural phenomenon. At one point, everyone was in on the joke, and it all started here. In 2003, 8 years after the band's creation, a comedian named Brian Posehn made one joke on a Comedy Central show called Tough Crowd, where he took a pretty harmless shot at Nickelback.
No one talks about the studies that show that bad music makes people violent. Like Nickelback makes me want to kill Nickelback.
That was the origin. That relatively tame joke slowly took over public consciousness because Comedy Central took that clip and used it for the show's main commercial. They took that throwaway line and played it in the commercial over and over and over again for 6 months.
This guy makes this shitty crack about us, and he's on Comedy Central. So they took that, they put it in a commercial for this one show, and that played on Comedy Central for 6 months straight.
Now, back in 2003, there was no social media. These networks, and Comedy Central especially, got all the views. The amount of influence that these networks had on public opinion is something that I don't really think exists today. From that moment, it was over. After the first couple of weeks, people who had never even heard of the band knew there was something to hate about them, and that everyone else hated them. And then to fit in, as people usually do, they hated on them too. This continued through the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, the early years of the internet where this meme truly exploded. It was during this era where these eclectic pieces of art were created. But Nickelback's bassist Mike Kroeger pointed out that they didn't really start getting hate until they started selling millions of albums. So then that can't be the whole story. One comedian making a joke wouldn't have hit so hard if it didn't resonate with the people, right? Well, yeah. By that point, people were sick of them. And that's because in 2002, 1 year before Brian Posehn made that career-ending joke, there wasn't a single second in 2002 where Nickelback's song How You Remind Me wasn't playing on American radio, making it also the most played song of that decade.
At any given second in those days, that song was in play on radio somewhere in the United States at any, like there was literally a continuous loop.
Yes, that's a real stat. Now, people had to have liked the song for it to make it to that point. But I think the American people were just exhausted because, again, back then, we didn't have the internet. There was no Spotify, and unless you had a CD, you couldn't listen to whatever you wanted whenever you wanted. So for the most part, people were at the mercy of what was playing on the radio. If every time I opened up Spotify, I had to hear the same song over and over again, I'd be sick of them too. This is a big piece of the puzzle. People were tired of the band being shoved in their faces, so when that Comedy Central bit came out, it was like a big explosion of relief. A singular moment in time where people looked around the room and said, yeah, I'm feeling the same thing. I'm sick of these guys too. And once that hate train started moving, it's hard to break out of that momentum. Apparently, people were so invested in hating on this band that some media outlets refused to publish articles that would paint Nickelback in a positive light.
The guy goes, yeah, I used to write for Rolling Stone magazine. He was asked to review one of our albums, and he wrote a very, very detailed and well thought out review of the album, and it was positive. You know, the guy said that the record was good. That
we can't have that.
He took it to his editor, and his editor just said, I'm not going to print this. And the guy was like, why? And he said, because we here at Rolling Stone are very anti-Nickelback. We do not like Nickelback. We can't write good things about Nickelback. So go back and retool it, find the negative. That's what sells for these guys.
So media outlets published pieces making fun of them. Popular shows jumped on the trend.
The only thing I want to hear right now is the sweet sound of this Nickelback CD cracking as I drive over it repeatedly.
Comedians and other celebrities cashed in on the moment.
If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, then have we found the perfect location for a Nickelback concert?
Hundreds of influencers showed up to the party.
Nickelback, nipple smack, nickel bad, nickel hack, nickel bitch, anus crack, tickle sack, nickel bomb, Jeffrey and the Scroats, nickel creed, nipple sack, etc.
And that filtered down to us, where people laughed, created memes, and relentlessly mocked the fans. But recently, it seems like people have been coming around. The hate train has really slowed down, and people have gone on to focus on bigger things. The meme is dying, and apparently the band isn't happy about that.
All that hate has given our career legs that it wouldn't have had if everybody would have just one day went, irrelevant, who cares?
In today's day and age where we see so many artists farming outrage for profit, it seems like Nickelback was just ahead of their time.
If you don't cause a guttural reaction to people, positive or negative, I feel like you're not really getting all of it. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have lovers and haters, people just don't care.